Okay, so here's the starter that I've had in the refrigerator. I made this starter earlier. It takes about 4 or 5 days to make, but that's a separate issue. So you take the starter out and leave it out for about an hour until it warms up. Okay, so it's warmed up, and just check that it's actually an active starter. If I go like this and cut into the middle, you can see lots of bubbles. So it's really working. And because my recipes are American, I'm using ounces. So I'm putting half of this in. This is about 3 ounces. Doesn't matter too much. And we'll replenish that in a minute. Starting at 0, oh that's about 5 ounces actually, it doesn't really matter much, 3-4 ounces. Reset to 0. I'm using rye flour just for extra flavour and to make the crust nicer. This is dark rye flour. I'm putting an ounce and 3/4 in here, roughly. It's 2 ounces, doesn't matter. And then I'm putting, making sure the total flour amount is 14.5 ounces. This is French white flour, French white bread flour. This is all bread flour except for the rye flour. So I'm now making this up to 14.5 ounces. The proportions are important. Okay, 14.5 ounces. Resetting to 0. I'm putting about 1.5 teaspoons of salt. I put in low salt. If you don't put the salt in, the bread won't work. And last thing, water. Reset to 0. And I'm going to put in 7 ounces, so that's just under half of water. And you've got to be a bit careful with the water, don't go over. Okay, 7. Okay, that's in the bread machine. That goes in machine. Choose the setting 8, which is the dough setting, and then go. After half an hour it's finished kneading, then you can take it out and put it in an oiled bowl to rise. So we'll take it up in half an hour. Last thing before we go, we've only got half the starter now, so we need to double that. So I put in 2.5 ounces of flour, 3 ounces of flour, 2.5 ounces, and then half water. So let's go this back. Zero. I'm using wholemeal bread flour. You can use any flour. So I'm putting in 2.5 ounces of flour. This isn't as precise as making the bread itself. Okay, 2.5 ounces of flour, 0, and then 2 ounces of water, or 2.25 ounces. Some people use more water and makes it more liquid, and then it ferments quicker, but then of course it doesn't last as long. So mix it all up, that's all you have to do. That kind of consistency, not liquid. Some people have it very liquid. Smooth out the surface. Like that. Put the cling film back on. And that'll be left out all day until it's starting to froth again. If it doesn't froth by the evening, increase and be frothy with bubbles on top, then just leave it out overnight. Then put it back in the fridge. And that's all you do. You just keep on replenishing it like that. If I want to make 2 loaves, then I'll just double this tomorrow, and then I'll have a load of starter. But it takes a day really for it to become very active, and you really want it to be very active. Okay, it's been 45 minutes in the kneading machine. So I'm just going to stop that because the kneading program goes on for an hour and a half. And there it is. And it's not too sticky. If it's too sticky, you need to knead in some more flour. That's why the water-flour ratio is important. Okay, I've got the oil sprayer here. Really, really useful. To spray this bowl. I'm taking the dough out. Roll it around the bowl to give it a coating of oil. Put the some cling film. I reuse the same cling film just to save on plastic. And then that's going to stay out. It's 2 o'clock now. That's going to stay out all day until it's right up to the top. Then it's going to go in the fridge overnight. Okay, it's 9 hours later. Let's have a look. The main dough has now doubled in size, so that's going in the fridge overnight. And here's the starter that's also been out. Let's just see if it's active. Yeah, you can see lots of holes. So that can go in the fridge as well. And that'll last 3 or 4 days. I make a loaf every 3 days. That's it. Thanks. Well, it's the next morning, so I'm going to take the dough out of the fridge. And you can see it's risen a bit more in the fridge as well. And I used to leave it to warm up, but that makes it more difficult to handle without getting rid of the bubbles and the air bubbles inside. So I'm going to spray this basket. It's a cloth covered basket called a bouche. You can also take off the cloth and use the circles to make an impression on the loaf. But that makes it stick more to the wood, so a lot of people use this cloth. So I'm going to spray it with oil. And then dust it with some flour. Just a little bit of flour. And then take this out as gently as I can. So I'm just going to go around the outside, pulling it away, because it's already oiled, this bowl. I'm just going to leave there. I'm not going to mess around with it at all, because every time you touch it, the oil disappears. So the bubbles disappear. Bit of oil on top to stop the cling film. Just loosely put the cling film over there. And what I want to do now is leave that until it's nicely spread out and larger. So that's maybe take 4, 5, 6, 7 hours. Who knows? I don't know. You just got to wait. Depends on the temperature of the room. The dough and everything. So there we are, that's it. Okay, it's later in the evening, about 9 or 10 hours later. You can see the bread has risen really nicely. I don't want to mess around with this at all because it's all full of air bubbles. So I'm just going to put it onto this baking sheet, and underneath the baking sheet I'm going to put either semolina, or in this case this is corn flour, just a little bit. Just going to help it not stick. The oven is on maximum, and you'll see in a minute what I'm going to do about the oven. I'm going to get a glass of water. And I've got this water sprayer as well. Okay, so just going to tip this onto the baking sheet. Carefully take it off. And then I'm going to put a bit of white flour and brush it on the surface gently. There's a scalpel. I'm going to make a deep cut. You can't slash it, it's got to be like a sawing motion because we don't want to tear the surface. And you put in any pattern you like, but it's got to be enough cuts, deep cuts, otherwise the whole thing will explode. There's quite a crust on this, you can feel there's a kind of thick surface. And that's that done. Okay, it's going in the oven. You can see it's already flattening, so we don't want it to flatten much more. Stick it in the middle of the oven and put a cup of water in the tray underneath. And then in 30 seconds, I'm going to give it a spray on the walls and the ceiling of the oven, and then another 30 seconds again. I'm going to set the timer for. I'm going to set it for 13 minutes. And then I'm going to turn it around after 13 minutes. Give it another 10, 12, 15 minutes, no more than half an hour. And then take it out. So here we are, it's 30 seconds. So opening up the oven. And then do it again in another 30 seconds. Halfway. Turn the lid around. See, it's rising nicely. "15 minutes on the timer, and the moment of truth. Another winner. We can eat it in an hour's time.